I'll be happy to be your guide. Is this on already?
I'll smile at Andre and pretend I'm talking to him. Thanks very much.
Have you seen Mario from the Jersey? Mario, the speaker from the Jersey. Also wenn es soweit ist, nur noch mal gucken. Ich bin zu warm angezogen. Ja, das war ich auch. Ist aber auch die Bewegung wahrscheinlich.
Ja gut, auch das stimmt.
Achso, PDF war das, ne?
Genau.
Hier, also, das wird dann so aussehen. Und hier kannst du dann mit dem Ding, wenn du rumlaufen willst, kannst du auch mit dem Mikro machen. Wir haben das dann auch nochmal da projiziert.
Oh, wow, okay.
Man,
Mehr als ich
oder halt
gewohnt
hier
bin.
in die Dinger. Ja, ich bin auch sehr pleasantly surprised bei den technischen Möglichkeiten. Okay?
Okay,
gut,
dankeschön.
Have a seat.
Relax. Gab es draußen noch irgendwie Tee oder Wasser?
Genau, draußen gibt es noch was zu trinken, wenn du was holen willst.
Wäre wahrscheinlich nicht scharf an, weil wir sind schon zu spät für.
Wir sind schon zu spät, genau. Ich wollte jetzt eigentlich um 5 nach anfangen, also wir würden jetzt langsam loslegen.
Okay, ich hole mir ein Wasser.
Ja, ja. Photograph.
Excellent.
Yes. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to Lisbon, to the Gulbenkian Foundation. May I ask for everyone's attention, please? We are already 7 minutes late, which I guess is okay being in Portugal, but me as a German, I'm already revolting inside. So please, if I could ask everyone, if possible, to sit in the middle of the room. I know it's annoying, but because we want to separate everyone into different groups later on for the simulation, and I think it makes sense if the imagined separation into the reality and an imagined future is resembled in also a spatial separation in different groups. Okay, so once again, very warm welcome to Lisbon. Thank you very much for taking the journey to Lisbon. I think the weather shows that you took the right decision, even though we are sitting in a windowless room for the following 4 hours. But I hope that's a price to pay that is worth it for having a reception later on and maybe enjoy the night also in the city. So I'm Daniel Kaiser. I work as a scientific policy officer for ALLEA and have been jointly with my colleague Maria, who is now in the AV room, who has done the main work. And thank you very much for that, Maria. It's been incredible. All the props go to you for ALLEA to organize this workshop. And we have done this together with the colleagues from Re-Imagine Europa, who are also present here. Erika Stel van Holstein as the executive director, and the other colleagues should also be here or outside and have greeted you this morning. I also would like to thank the Gulbenkian Foundation for this brilliant setup. Yeah, I think we can get started. Just some more practicalities. There is Wi-Fi. As you can see, there should be the 2 signs. Feel free to join. As I said, there will be the reception from 6 onwards outside, and also coffee will be served during the afternoon. Anytime you can go out, grab a coffee or water or juice or anything you like. The presentations in the beginning will be live streamed, and pictures will be taken by our photographer, so I hope everyone agrees to that. But the discussions will not be streamed or recorded for any later purposes, so feel free to voice your opinions as free as you wish. And we hope then for a fruitful discussion. I will start now, but just very quickly, I think you should probably already know who we are, but just say that who ALLEA actually is. We are the European Federation of Academies of Sciences and Humanities, and thereby representing more than 50 academies from about 40 countries in the Council of Europe region. And we have been working together with RIE-Imagine Europa, it's a think tank founded by the late French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing as an incubator for new political ideas, I think like 8 years ago. We have already been working together in a conference in Berlin with Giscard d'Estaing present, and we have since then continued our joint work, especially on GMOs and intellectual property rights, which is one of the foci of our work in ALLEA. Also outside you will find some publications, some flyers, one report on genome editing for crop improvement that we made at ALLEA, and there's also a statement coming soon on measures to ease the impact of the intellectual property system on new genomic techniques. So stay tuned on our website if you are interested in that. So through this work, then there was the idea to join forces with, as a knowledge partner for RIE-Imagine Europa, and a joint task force was founded, which we joined as a cross-disciplinary task force on sustainable agriculture and innovation. And this work finally led to this workshop here today, which this workshop has the special purpose on looking at and understanding the diverse perspectives on sustainable agriculture in general and NGTs in particular. So the reason for that was that before ALLEA's part was rather like on the natural science part, providing scientific evidence from the different academies and the experts throughout Europe. But then there was a realization already before with the narrative group in RIE-Imagine Europa that there is a need to also look at the societal dimensions of this problem and discourses, and especially polarization. So today the idea was to bring people together who are experts on the agricultural part, on the natural scientist part, and the social scientists who work on narratives, disinformation, trust in expertise, which has also for some time now been a topical focus in ALLEA. So I won't go more into detail on our joint work, but try to get started with the presentations. And I'm very proud today, also this is an overview of the task force, that we will start with a presentation by Professor Urs Nigli, who will give us a short introduction on the debate on sustainable agriculture. And then, as I mentioned, we have a social scientist, Donia, who has been working with ALLEA in the Peritia project on trust and expertise, trying to shed light on the dynamics of especially social media and public trust in science. A presentation by Barbara Galani from the European Food Safety Authority on risk perception and public awareness around the topic of food and agriculture. And then a presentation by Mario Scharfbillig from the Joint Research Center on moral dimensions of public policies, I think around meat consumption. Is that correct? Yeah. And finally, we will introduce the work that has been done within the group in RIE-Imagine Europa on the narratives work, social psychology by Marcin and Andre, who are also here today and will play a main role also in the afternoon and in the general discussion. But they will present the depolarization manual and the reframe methodology that you will also find in your folders. You might have had a look at it before. So this is one of the main purposes of today, is that we want to discuss with you in how far this is applicable and where there are shortcomings of this idea of depolarizing the narratives and the debate, and then apply it first in the afternoon to a fictive social simulation of a scenario in the future, which you will notice is quite close to the actual debate, but we thought it's probably an interesting incentive for the debate to change it a little bit. And then we convene again in the plenary at 5:15 to discuss the results of this tabletop exercise and also translate it to the actual debate on NGTs today. And then we'll have the cocktail reception that everyone's looking forward to. So I have talked enough, I think, and I'm very happy now to ask Urs Nigli on stage, who is the director of the Institute of Agroecology, agroecology.science in Switzerland, and has been the president also of the Institute of Organic Agriculture from 1990 to 2020, and FIBL has become a leading research establishment in the area of organic agriculture, developing into a huge European network. I think the ones that working in this area should know him. And yeah, I'm very glad you are here today, Urs, and would now start your presentation at the beginning. So this is your pointer. Excellent.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. So, as always, I will tell you 1,000 things within 5 minutes. So modern breeding methods and sustainable farming system. I will talk about our famous apple of discord. That was a brochure of Reimagine Europa. Different farming approaches to achieve sustainability. Innovation is essential. That's already a conclusion, not a title. And then how to guide sustainable farming systems, and new narratives are needed. So this is the organic apple of discord. So that was the quality on the left side of organic apples when I started at FIBL, the Research Institute of Organic Farming. And of course, these apples were bought by enthusiastic organic consumers. And this was the quality on the right side when I left. And this is nowadays a perfect organic apple quality. And there are two ways to achieve that. One way is via breeding, the VF resistance, the single gene resistance against CAB. And the other way is 47 treatments, fungicide treatments with fungicides which are accepted and registered according to the organic regulation. And so these two options, and unfortunately this resistant varieties, this is a single gene variety which has been created in the 1950s. It still works, although during the last 10-15 years there was a breakthrough, but it still works. And the organic apple alone nowadays shows that many reproaches to the genetic engineering can't be absolutely true. And the problem is that only 1/3 of the consumer really buy this these new varieties, most of them still by Gala apple and Boskop and Golden Delicious. And there you have the situation that you have 46 treatments in Middle Europe, which is not a good solution. And I think that for sustainable farming systems which want to reduce pesticides and want to reduce nitrogen fertilizer, that the new breeding technologies could be a very interesting solution. And another example, also from organic, that was the fourth Horizon program of the EU Commission with a huge project, low input, quality, low input food. We tried everything to replace copper in potato. And you can see here some approaches we took in many experiments across Europe, from Denmark to UK to Switzerland to Austria and to Germany. And we tried everything, optimizing soil fertility, optimizing soil structure, then using different cultivars and using also biostimulants, microbiological products, microbiological consortia to solve the problem. And the only really approach which worked was the cultivar. So this is also in organic farming systems with high soil fertility. We cannot really apply a system approach in order to solve plant health problems. You can see it here that very clearly. This was a Bintier, and this was a resistant varieties which is already no longer on the market. So again, you see here that many theories which are quite interesting as a hypothesis do not work in practice when it comes to diseases and so. So we need a powerful breeding. That's the conclusion. That's why I have started to commit myself to novel breeding technologies. So if I were a farmer, I would run my farm organically, because about soil fertility, that's a strong approach. And I would sell my products to a higher price, to the markets, because that's a disaster we see at the moment, that farmers are so much under pressure because they are not well paid. So an organic farmer is a perfect strategy, especially in Europe. But the question is, can this strategy be scaled up globally or all European? And then we have a problem, because we have a trade-off with productivity. And this trade-off is huge. It ranges from 15 to 50% depending on the site conditions and depending on the plants. We see from these are all research data. We see from farm data, farm harvest data from Austria, that the average yields of organic cereals is 35% lower, and for tuber and root crops it ranges between 27 and 49%, and it's mainly because of the plant nutrition and also to pests and diseases which are not well regulated, meaning that there is a low input or agroecological system do have an urgent need to become better. And I see at the moment, after 30 years of investing into organic research, I see that breeding is also an essential question. And why not use the best breeding techniques? Meanwhile, I talk a lot about agroecological farming system because this is a little bit broader than organic. And it's not so strictly regulated. And you see here all the elements of agroecological farming. I don't go into the details. It is all about diversity, diversifying systems, diversifying farmers, diversifying landscapes, meaning that this is the way to go. And we see that looking at technologies, that there is a different attitude between organic farmers and agroecological farmers. So agroecological farms are more open also to technological innovation, and they are not so strictly inhibiting, for instance, all what is will come, and therefore I see that with agroecology we have a way forward which is quite interesting. Organic farmers cannot accept such a technology. They are restricted by their regulation, but maybe many conventional farmers can go towards agroecology and can use the system approach of organic farmers with the technology approach of modern science. So we need, and that's my last one, we need new, more appropriate narratives to tell the future. The current narrative is that a system approach is much more effective for addressing multiple challenges than a silver bullet technology like novel breeding technologies. I'm okay with that, but that's a very narrow and not an appropriate narrative for the future. The appropriate future is there is no basic contradiction between sustainable and diversified production systems on the one hand, and using best modern science-based technologies like NGTs, digitalization, nanotechnology, or artificial general intelligence. This is what will come, and this fits together, and we should tell that as our new narrative. And in addition to find a way towards sustainable farming systems, we need also tools to assess when is a system sustainable and when is a system not sustainable. And here science offers a lot of tools to assess sustainability. So not banning technologies, but assessing, empower farmers to become sustainable. That's my final conclusion. Thanks a lot.
So thank you very much, Urs, for this insightful presentation. I think we have like 2 or 3 minutes for questions and answers, if there are any. If not, we can also save the discussion for later and move on now with the next speaker. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question right now, or shall we just move on? So then I would say thank you, Urs, for this. I think we'll come back to the points you made later on. And I would now ask Donia on stage. Donia Alinejad is a former colleague of mine from the Peritia project, where we worked together on trust in science and expertise. And she's a media researcher with a focus on digital media and has studied the role of social media usage in people's experiences of spatial mobility, community formation, emotional care, and scientific knowledge communication. And I think is now going to tell us something about how social media platforms shape the communication about scientific expertise around politically contested issues such as climate change and COVID-19, which has been the focus also of the Peritia project. So Tonya, I'll put your slides up here, and then you're free to this one. Excellent. You can use that one on the mic, or
Yeah, no,
need
then
to
I'll
do the slides.
do the same as
Okay.
the trend we set. Thanks, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Donia, as Daniel kindly introduced me as. I am an assistant professor and media researcher at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And I'm here to speak to you today a bit indeed about social media environments and their role in public controversies. Based on the research that we've done, indeed in the Peritia project on policy, expertise, and trust. And within that project, myself and Professor José van Dijk really focused on the role of the changing media landscape. So we're really talking, and what we mean by the sort of what we're talking about when we're talking about the changing media landscape is really the sort of growing power of social media platforms, not only in the wider media environment, but also society at large, sort of various different sectors that are being also integrated, infiltrated by the influence of social media platforms. So we're going to look a little bit at the case of COVID-19 and climate change. This particular case that I'm going to talk about brings them both together. And I'll say a little bit more about what we found there. This discussion that we had was with sort of a colleague of mine that we came together and collaborated to come up with the latest publication that we just sort of brought out of the Peritia project. And it's published in Public Understanding of Science, a journal in the field. And I think it generated some insights that we can use here about how scientific knowledge and expertise becomes politicized when it enters the digitally mediated arena of public contestation. And I think that has some sort of maybe connection points that we can explore potentially for understanding how and how polarization works and how sort of addressing it and thinking about depolarization. So I'm sort of hopeful that we'll find those points of relevance. So in this work, we identified this main, let's say, challenge. Can we make a meaningful distinction between science that's politicized in a, let's say, healthy way and sort of societally healthy way, and science that's politicized in more of a sort of toxic or more unhealthy way when it comes to public democratic engagement and deliberation? We build here on literature that points out that some degree of politicization of science is necessary in knowledge societies, especially when we see an increasingly close relationship between science and policy. And so there's a sort of a degree that we have to not only accept as inevitable, a degree of politicization that we have to sort of accept, but also actually sort of promote and sort of consider good for public deliberation. Because we want to avoid the kind of technocratic discussion and decision-making that excessively depoliticizes how science informs policy. But on the other hand, we also want to avoid what we call that toxic or unhelpful politicization of science that makes deliberation and contestation very difficult in the opposite extreme, because it sort of politicizes scientific knowledge and expert claims to the point where I would say basic sort of common ground starts to erode when it comes to sort of agreed upon knowledge and epistemic authority, facts, etc. So I would say this kind of politicization of science and expertise is sort of more conducive to the polarization that we want to avoid. So that's how we sort of conceptually framed the challenge that we're working with and sort of started to look at it within the media, the social media environment. So what we show, what I will talk about here and what we show is that in the Dutch context, we have a sort of set of data that we collected in what was then known as Twitter, and so we use it as a case to think through this conceptual distinction that I outlined. And we show that in this instance, on the basis of this data, on users who were actively tweeting about climate change and COVID-19, the first form of politicization of science that we saw was something we could that we could define as contestation, meaning tweets were bringing the two issues together and sort of using rhetoric around the two issues and the policy decisions that were being made around them to sort of contest decisions that were being made by those in positions of authority. That took place exclusively within the blue cluster, and that blue cluster is associated with mainstream press, scientific, sort of authoritative scientific bodies, and leading parties, main sort of political party leaders' accounts. So the latter two clusters were associated with what we draw in the literature to talk about as ideological science rejection. And so what we saw there was more, not so much the contestation of policy, but really sort of targets of the expertise and the science and the scientists themselves, sort of really drawing attention to reasons to distrust what was being claimed. And these latter two clusters were really sort of associated with right-wing political leaders and groups, and that was the purple cluster, and the green one were really sort of conspiracy websites and accounts of important, let's say, influential conspiracy theory leaders that had emerged in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Dutch press. So what we saw there happening in that latter cluster in particular was sort of these claims being made about alternative science and dissident scientists not being listened to and not being included in the public discussion. So we sort of thought, okay, let's look into what these alternative claims are. And we saw that within the tweet content, again, in line with this political clustering, we see that, for instance, so the websites that we have here from the halfway point down are associated with the mainstream press and political tweets. And from the halfway point up are the right-wing and conspiracy tweets within those clusters. And so those bottom half are really sort of government websites, mainstream press websites, various national news channels, and government websites. And the top half are various conspiracy websites, but also notably social media platforms, YouTube and Medium key among them. So we see how sort of the clusters, the political clusters that are associated with politically motivated ideological science rejection are really moving away in terms of just the sources that are being used from the rest of the sort of the mainstream, let's say, the political mainstream. Their sources are really themselves diverging from each other. So what we sort of should take away from this, I think, is indeed that we do have these different kinds of politicization, but that doesn't mean that we need to use that distinction between contestation and rejection to exclude anybody from the political discussion or the public debate. I think that's important as an implication to sort of take on board. What I think it is useful for is really just understanding the nature of the disagreements that are happening, where exactly they are happening, how we can characterize them, and also then I would say if we want to take something away from this, sort of to keep controversy about policy in the realm of policy disagreement and make as much sort of bandwidth possible, as much space possible for that sort of healthy contestation to take place so that you don't sort of see it channeling into sort of a breakdown of that common ground that we no longer can sort of see any basis for meaningful discussion and meaningful disagreement, actually. So that's what I have to share with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Donia, for this almost in-time presentation.
That's why I already went to...
No, I think that was very insightful. I think everyone could see different to what we have seen before, but I think there are probably many things that we can bring together or that are food for thought to project what we heard right now about another case that has nothing to do really with agriculture, but has to do with trust in science and how certain discourses on scientific evidence are perceived by in society and especially social media, and maybe this provides us with some insights for the field of agriculture and especially NGTs. So, but now we have about like 5 minutes for questions and answers. I see Mario's hand up, and over there. Maria, can you just pass the mic around? And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it works. Thank you for the very interesting presentation, and I of course agree with you that we want to have some level of civilized discussion around the facts and especially the policy decisions. But I have one question for you, if you have an answer to this. How do you deal with people for which you know, or for whom you know they are acting in bad faith, who bring arguments that you know they don't care about these arguments themselves, but they're actually just bringing them up because they want to derail the discussion in some way or form or another? How do you deal with that? Do you have recommendations? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm very sort of sympathetic to indeed looking at the motivations of different actors as well in this sort of changing media landscape. And I think there are different ways to respond to that. So in a way, what I see as maybe taking the wind out of the sails of people who otherwise would maybe not be so powerful, or would sort of be in a position where not so many followers would actually latch on to them. What you would do to create that situation, I think, is also to regulate platforms themselves. So it doesn't really matter what you do to one actor or another actor who's really acting in bad faith, if the environment makes it interesting for further actors to emerge to produce this kind of information. Because I think, indeed, if you analyze it as a motive of sort of a commercial motive, let's say, or sort of a really sort of strongly ideological motivated motive, you're not going to sort of change that those actors so much in what they choose, but more how much support they get. And I think if you have sort of policy that also limits the power of social media platforms in sort of creating changes in the wider media landscape, and promoting that commercial logic in the platforms themselves, I think you sort of take the wind out of their sails a bit. And so I think that's one level at which I think you do have a lot of impact.
Okay, so yeah, we have a lady over there, and then okay, so gentleman over there, could you please just maybe in one sentence introduce yourself, who you are and where you come from, and then we have you here in the front. Did I miss anyone? So I think we take the two questions at once and then an answer, and then we continue with the next presentation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the two presentations so far. Highly interesting. I'm Hugo de Vries. I cannot do it in 1 second, sorry, to be honest. But I work for RIE in France, and I'm involved in the preparation of the partnership on sustainable food systems, but from the society point of view, not from the production point of view. I've a question about the communication. Of course, you have the two extremes. One is somebody who is giving misinformation or something that is completely not evidenced, where you can say, this is still a lesson learned because maybe we didn't give the right information in the understandable way. So still, I think we need to carefully listen, but you can counteract it. You have, on the other hand, you have the information where there is quite a consensus about the evidence and it's quite a strong message. 1 + 1 is 2, even if a marketeer often says it's maybe 3. It's not true. 1 + 1 is 2. So that is something. But then you have the area in between, where we are also, as scientists, but also as policymakers, dealing with enormous amount of uncertainties. And we are even increasing that because we all like to say now we are going to system approaches, and system approaches are increasing the level of uncertainty. And thus also as scientists, we are not 100% sure. We never were 100% sure, but we are going far from this limit. How do you deal with that kind of information, and what are your lessons for the scientists in that case?
Okay, thank you. Tony, I just take the other question as well, and then you wrap them together.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much, Donia and professors, for your presentations. I'm Courtney Price, lead for behavioral science at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And I was particularly curious, I have a kind of a two-part question. The one, given that context really is so important and drives a lot of how we interact, and Twitter is a very specific, or now X is a very specific context, I was wondering if you could talk about the limitations of your research in that vein, given that Twitter has a limitation of characters, given that Elon Musk is a divisive figure that only recently purchased it. So there's a lot of context there to be shared. I'd be curious also if there's any research comparing different, like you talked about different social media contexts, and how they might differ from your results. The second one, perhaps, is as a misinformation, disinformation novice, I ask this with all humility. Impressions of depolarization and discussions around contestation and rejection feel very reactive about why, like, what can we do about this state, rather than where you have pre-bunking and debunking arguments that are more proactive, at least they sound more proactive in terms of how can we interject and engage with stakeholders to influence behavior. So I was wondering if you could kind of help me meld those two worlds in terms of how you've done your research with regard to and the limitations around the social science research on these methods of inoculating, etc., against fake news. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for these questions. I'm going to try to connect your question with your second question with regard to sort of science communication, let's say. How to deal with uncertainty, I think, is to sort of help publics to understand the nature of scientific research. And that might have a bit of a sort of implication for how you also, let's say, inoculate publics against sort of threats to the epistemic authority of science. I think we have to be much more open before crises about the uncertainties that are essential to academic knowledge production, and the open-endedness of this project of knowledge seeking, and really the sort of focus on finding what is actually unknown. And so our project is actually to sort of focus on uncertainty and to sort of maybe not even close it down, but to sort of continue this seeking truth, right? So this sort of endless ongoing project. I think when people start to expect science to deliver that kind of sort of ultimate truth, we make ourselves very vulnerable as scientists to public criticism, public misunderstanding, and also we make ourselves vulnerable to those with bad intentions to say, aha, look, they're actually uncertain. And if we sort of preempt that and say, well, that's the nature of the project, there is more consensus about this issue than there is about that issue at the moment, but a level of uncertainty is essential in what we're doing. We sort of anticipate, preempt that kind of an attack, and that's happened in cases and sort of with regard to climate science, for instance, where scientists are actually caught really overstating the certainty of certain things because they're worried, and it really is a sort of shooting yourself in the foot. I think you have a really great point about the limitations of working with Twitter data. Absolutely. In the project, we looked at a case on Twitter, but then also interview more ethnographic research on actual users, and then more sort of media narrative and political economy research. So you have to use absolutely different methods to say something sort of bigger picture about the impact of social media. I think there's inevitably limits with looking at the social media data itself, because what you're doing when you do that is always saying something about the platform itself rather than just purely the issue and the discussion. So that's why we look through multiple methods, but I couldn't go into all of it now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sorry to stop the discussion here now, but I think it's food for thought for later, and probably also relates to what we will hear now from Barbara Galani, if you may ask you on stage. This time I'll switch the presentation first. So, you want the mic or you want to stay? Yeah. Okay, I'll take this with me this time. Let me just quickly introduce you. So we are very glad to have Barbara here because she's the head of the European Food Safety Authority's Communication and Partnerships Department, called Engage, right? And has been a member of the Food Safety Authority's senior management team since May 2016 already, so very experienced person in the field, and especially when it comes to communicating complex issues in the areas of food safety, authenticity, and research to lay audiences. And I think this relates very well to what we heard before, and I'm very much looking forward to what you have to say in this regard in your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And yes, we dived straight into communication of science with the most difficult questions that we're all trying to address. And I, in the spirit of the bridging the divide, I'm going to bridge to Donia's presentation with using similar tools and really giving a bit of an overview of what people are talking about when they talk about sustainability in the area of food. And in the past couple of months, with the exclusion of the past 10 days, which have been very lively in this area with regards to farming communities in the whole of Europe. But for the past 2 months, the narrative has been around One Health, biodiversity, alternative proteins, both plant-based and cell-cultured, the impact of food systems on the environment, with a particular trend of narratives on online news on plastic packaging, because, there are always good reasons, either a political discussion, regulatory discussions, or publication of new research. For what concerns social media narratives, very, very similar topics trending, with climate change and NGTs playing a bigger role in those sort of debates. Why, you might wonder, is the European Food Safety Authority interested in this? The European Food Safety Authority is a technical, scientific agency that advises and provides scientific opinions for use by regulators in the development of policies and the development of legislation. But we don't operate in a vacuum, and our science is only relevant if it makes sense in the context it happens in. So our work is based on science, it's focused on safe food, but it happens in the context of sustainable food systems more and more. And our work fits perfectly and supports the work of the Green Deal, Farm to Fork, the future of sustainable use regulation, and whatever will happen after a new Commission and new Parliament take roots. And we deal with anything from nutrition to animal health and welfare to the assessment of the safety of additives and novel foods. We talk about feed additives with the intended consequence of reduced methane emissions, for example. So we fit quite nicely in this picture, and we need to understand it in order to communicate our science in a meaningful way. That's why we established a social science function that started really growing in 2016, 2017, with a strategic aspect and the targeted aspect. We have a Eurobarometer survey that is done every 3 years, and it produces a wealth of information that it takes 3 years to really analyze and fully use. And we also have tools like flash polls so that we can turn around in the space of 7 working days with quick checks about the tone of the discussions and how we might helpfully communicate our science in that context. So that is how we fit in. And we tried to play around a little bit with the Beyond the Apple of Discord report, because our flash poll really identified all the categories that are described in the report. So what we did, as I said, a little bit as a comparison and sort of pre-post validation, we identified the group of unpredicted consequences, so those citizens who say that new technologies are dangerous because scientists overestimate their ability to control what they produce. And what we found is that respondents who have most positive perceptions are those that tend to be less worried about GM. So there is this trend that is not fixed and it's not as strong as one might imagine, but it's obviously there. Younger age, higher knowledge, and a more general trust, the general trust in the institutions, in the scientific community, in life in general. It's really an attitude to life. Political right tend to be the ones that have more positive perceptions, and those who have an interest in food safety. So quite interesting overall description of the group that is in the report. We've heard these promises before. We identified those. And we found that the scientific literacy around NGTs is very low. Something that I would like you to note, because I will ask you for advice on this as Director of Communications at EFSA. And around 6 in 10 respondents indicate that the idea of GM food worries them. And because very few make the differentiation between NGTs and GM, this is something that, of course, we need to consider. And the third and last play around with the report is progress and this sort of desire for innovation to come and solve acknowledged problems in the present and the future. So there are citizens out there that have trust in innovation, that see it as a solution, And most importantly, they see it as a solution in a situation of crisis. We are in a climate crisis, acknowledged situation. So how can this help us? So here is where I ask for your assistance. And when I saw the event, I said, I need to be there because I got so many questions to ask all these people who have shared interest and want to make progress in this area. So, okay, as the European Food Safety Authority, we've had sort of periods, you might have heard of glyphosate and the storm we've been in, where we fall into the sort of victim mode and say, oh, well, it's all about ideological science rejection and we can't do anything about it and we just need to sort of bear it until it goes away. And on the other hand, we go, oh, if only people could know what we know. So we fall back into this information deficit approach, which is very patronizing and it doesn't work. So my question is, with the knowledge that we've got, with all this analysis that Donia and colleagues in academia help us with the understanding from our targeted surveys, what do we do? What do we do with all this information? So do we sort of go into the proactive mode, you were saying? Let's not sit back and wait for things to happen. Let's do inoculation, let's do pre-banking, let's do education. But are we in the right position to do that? And are we going to be a trustworthy organization because of our role? Or do we need to look out for others to do that work? And if so, where do we find them and how do we mobilize them? And yes, engagement. We do a lot of engagement, which we believe is really informed by our social science research. We have different formats. And how far is this going to take us? And how can we use our engagement activities to really drill down into the shared values, into those platforms where we can even engage with those whom we think that put out information well knowing that is not correct. So it's really, we have an exercise waiting for us today, and these are just some of my questions. And the third is, how do we play on this knowledge that we've got about this more willingness to accept technologies for solving crises, to play that into the narratives that we develop together, not to convince people, but to engage with people so that we can build a stronger basis for the scientific assessments and for the policy solutions that we need. So it's a cry for help, but I think I'm in good company and I'm looking forward to the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I may ask you to just stay here to answer the questions because we also still have the stream going on and then people in behind the camera also see something. Yeah, who has the solution?
Yeah, fantastic.
Pere.
Now in EFSA you have a lot of experience. You have EFSA exists since 25 years, more or less. You have produced hundreds or thousands of reports, scientific reports on all your panels. Can you find cases where the advice from the scientific panels was wrong and produced a risk of food safety and learn from that? Or it worked perfectly well and never happened, this thing?
Yeah, I think we go a little bit into what the colleague from INRIA was saying. What is right and what is wrong when you are in the grey area of the sort of forefront of science development and regulatory science development. So the conclusions that you took when the knowledge was what it was might not be the same now, but it's for good reasons. And we've got systems in place for sort of routine, regular reviews of our assessments. And we got flags and alerts when new research comes up and when the critical mass of research is such that our work needs to be revised. So I think regulatory science is not any different from science in the sense that it's continuously evolving. And I think this is part of the narrative that needs to be there. And I was really hopeful in the midst of COVID when I was isolating on my own with a lot of time to think and trying to be really positive and thinking, people are going to realize that there aren't yes or no answers when it comes to difficult scientific questions. And people are going to come out of the COVID experience with a much better understanding of scientific decisions and on the sort of trade-offs that need to be made. I don't think we got out of it quite as I was hoping, but I think there is fertile ground there to talk about making difficult decisions in the presence of big uncertainties and having to make these decisions. Otherwise we freeze and it's worse for society as a whole. So I think, as I said, it's the right community where to have these discussions because sometimes it feels like a bit of a lonely place in an organization to try and have this sort of team brainstorming. So I don't know, what do you think about EFSA's work? Have you seen trends in EFSA's gross mistakes?
I've been a member of an EFSA panel, and I was a member of the scientific steering committee before EFSA that had to deal with mad cows. Yeah. That was in an enormous uncertainty, and the scientific panel did the right advice, and the crisis was well managed after the manage. So my question is the system in the middle of uncertainty more uncertain than the mad cow's disease? It's difficult to find another example. So is the system not working? Is in the middle of uncertainties, I mean, all the advice that the panels provide always state uncertainty existing, always state that there are uncertainties. So, but the advice is there, and it's something maybe highly probable or less probable or something like that, but an advice has to be provided. My question is the system at some point has produced risk for food safety in Europe, or it has worked nicely?
Okay, maybe we take other questions first. So can you raise up your hands? So I think we start here. You were the first. Yes, so we collect the questions again, and then you make even a better effort than Donia wrapping back 2 questions. You wrap up 5 or 6.
Yes, just very quickly. Philippe Dumont, I work in an association in France to promote plant biotechnology. The impression I have of EFSA is one of your difficulties in this area is that you cannot talk about policies. You cannot make policy decisions. So you can only respond to questions that are addressed to you within the confines of a specific mandate. So you are not able, for example, to talk about history of safe use and to say there are good reasons why the system is working as it is working, because the question is not asked of you. And you cannot yourself, you don't have the authority to present a question to which you would answer. And this makes your lives very, very difficult. I have a lot of sympathy, but I think you ought to negotiate with the Commission and DG Sante to have the ability to make policy recommendations, to find a way to do that. Because your sister regulators around the world do explain what are certain concepts that are used in decision making, which have the effect of reassuring consumers. They will talk about history of safe use, you will not. You see, that's because it's not in a mandate that's given to you by the Commission. So you can't talk about it.
Yeah, very briefly, principle of risk management and risk assessment very firmly divided because of the history we heard about the mad cow, which is at the origin of EFSA's. What we have with the Commission, or whomever submits the question for EFSA to be answered, is a mandate dialogue. It's not a negotiation, it's a mandate dialogue, which allows us to contextualize the question and to really say, okay, if we only address this, then we can't see the bigger picture. But that is as far as we can go in the dialogue about the mandates.
Okay, someone over there.
Yeah. Hello, so Noah Simon from BeLife. So I have been engaging with the EFSA from also a long, long time ago. And I mean, it's a little bit in the same line. I think for me, the limitation that EFSA has is that for certain threats that are very, very big threats, the risk assessment is enough. Risk assessment gives you already the picture, and it's the right picture, and things need to be done based on this. Then afterwards, there are others that are a little bit less obvious in terms of risk. And there is where the risk assessment gets the limitation, and it is the risk management that that should be activated, because there is a lot of field use, let's say, that is not integrated, and let's say, and field reality that is not integrated into the risk assessment. And for me, this is the part where the limitation of EFSA gets, because of course your mandate is risk assessment, it's not risk management. So yeah, so this, at least in my experience with all the B issues and all that, this has been the observation as an outsider. And just to answer, there are examples, for instance, in which the risk assessment didn't work, and the case is when the neonicotinoids, no? But it is a matter of science evolution. Yeah. Well, but I mean, let's say in this case, in the past, there were, let's say, they were put in the market following a risk assessment. And then years after, when the science evolved, the methodology of risk assessment evolved and everything, they were removed from the market. So from this point of view, I say that the opinion may have failed, let's say, but it was because of an evolution of science, which of course we need to accept because science evolves and knowledge evolves. And that's why methodology needs to evolve, which, I mean, it's no contest there.
Okay, so we jump over to the other side of the room and then back to Mario, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. Highly appreciated. I also had discussions with Steph Bronssoir about it, and also about the partnership, because I think that the problem is not maybe in the what, but in the how. The what, I really believe in EFSA, you are going further in trying to identify where are the problems. You are going further in the measuring equipment and so on and so on. And you do it as well as possible. Even if the systems are becoming more complex, you are proceeding. But it is, I think, the how. Who is responsible for what we are doing? And I think we are ending up here in that we need to share responsibilities. Because the cases are becoming so complex. So it is not just EFSA as an agency who needs to give an answer. It is a community of which EFSA is probably part of, researchers are part of, the private sector is part of, the philanthropic organizations are part of. So I think that we need to go to new kind of partnerships and then discuss what are our joint responsibilities and what are, because otherwise you will not step out of this even more and more complex issue. So my advocacy would be for a really partnership that are inclusive, not fully, of course, impossible, but inclusive in terms of very different actors. I was hoping a little bit with the discussion about the circular economy that should come up, but that's really a missed opportunity, I think, also by the European Commission. In a circular economy, we are all responsible because we are all suppliers and demanders. Whatever we do, it comes back to us. Whatever role we have, that should be, in philosophical terms, a very good example. I think we need to go in sustainable food systems a little bit in this direction, that we jointly take responsibilities. That should be my feedback first to you. So the how question is more important than the what.
Okay, so we have Mario and then Courtney as well. Quickly.
Thank you. Try to be quick, and I try to at least give an idea of what I would say as an answer to your first question. Perhaps not a question to you then. So the first thing is what we know by now is what's extremely problematic if there's a void of authoritative information on any topic that becomes salient in the news or wherever. So whenever you know there's a decision coming up on something that you decide, then perhaps you even need to do a proactive scan of, if you Google this, will you find yourself or some authoritative source, or only these blogs where people write their opinion on this. That could be like a proactive thing for you to do, and then you need to be there at the time when people start searching for this. And the second thing is just some recent research by Hugo Mercier and others, where they show it's not necessary that you give people one answer or the simple answer to something that we think they ask, but we should give them the option, and they develop chatbots that give answers to all the kinds of different questions they identify with that audience research that you do. And they can ask the question that they think are relevant to them. Because very often we are very bad at knowing what is exactly the question that is tearing at them. And this way, and they show this very, very clear on NGTs, on vaccines, that they shift attitudes quite a lot in a certain direction, because then people ask what they care about. And this may be a way forward, because in communication, very often we think about the good campaign, the great video, what we can do for everyone. Perhaps more this interactive version of ask what you want. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
Barbara, lovely to see you. And once again, Courtney, FAO. Thank you for, basically embodying so much best practices, even in risk communication, in the terms of empathizing with the audience and asking for help. I think you could have got a lot fewer responses and less engagement had you presented some ideas and asked a very more scientific type of question and not empathized with the audience or not solicited such also with emotion. So you're answering your own question because you're an expert. And this connects also with Donya's point about sharing uncertainty. As humans, since Ellsberg and even before, we know we hate uncertainty. We really like to avoid it. And somehow when we get to be my experience, and I don't know if it reflects this or helps the question of what to do, we tend to, especially in natural science circles, forget that the uncertainty aversion is very present in us no matter what our expertise. And so we avoid uncertainty when we communicate, and we also feel compelled to have the right answer or have the truth in our pocket, as we say. And yet our careers as scientists are doing the opposite, are asking better questions to get more and more interesting information and more doubt. The more we know, the more we study something, the less we know. So can we use these social science principles on ourselves a little bit more and mainstream a bit more debiasing techniques that can help us manage uncertainty aversion, especially when we're in positions of needing to share and engage with the public. It's a long-term game in sharing uncertainty, and it's very tempting to take the short-term route and try to have the answer. And so I think it's maybe a little bit utopian, but I would imagine a behaviorally informed scientific community who sees their own heuristics before they communicate and tries to mitigate them or at least work with them. And the other point I just was going to say is that we do so much experimentation in the natural sciences, and yet the social sciences, we have a dearth of experiments, and it'd be great to build on, pre-bunking is still hardly research. It's a drop in the bucket. So can we build on what EFSA and others are doing, and then try some, and this is why today is so exciting, try some of these exercises, maybe more in rigorous or controlled environments, to get some more data as to why we think there's evidence around reframing discussions in a certain way will lead to better outcomes. But thank you again.
Thank you for all the input, and we are trying to publish more in the area of social sciences, the work that we do with focus groups, for example. We publish everything. We just want to find the time to publish more in academic literature, so that the work that we do can really contribute to this. And I think yes, partnerships absolutely for the science and also for the communications, because Mario, you were saying about providing the information and answering the questions that come from the different citizens. Citizens are not just interested in food safety. and what we can provide is just food safety. What we're trying to do is really to build some platforms that with technologies are now more available to us, with national authorities, with other agencies, with other institutions, to really be able to address the multiple questions that come from the same person, without leaving that sort of gap between institutions. And that requires a lot of cohesion and a lot of goodwill to work together to provide the different pieces of the jigsaw that put together makes sense for an audience that is a lot more complex than I want my food to be safe. I'm going.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, because we really need, if we want to do the exercise that apparently sparked some interest also, and it's probably a sensible thing to do. If it's okay, Jens, I would now stop here and then keep your question in mind, maybe for the coffee break or for later the general discussion, and would now ask Mario on stage to enlighten us with his presentation. Let me just, yes, of course. Nah. So you can use that one, as I said. So maybe just very quickly also give you an adequate introduction. So Mario Scharfbillig is a science policy advisor at the JRC, at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, where he works on behavioral research and implementation in the area of evidence-informed policymaking since 2019. No, I'm lost. Sorry. He's currently leading the work on values and identities in the political process as part of the Enlightenment 2.0 research program, and will give us, I think, a short glimpse of this work here in his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks for the invitation that I can speak to you. And what sparked this presentation was when Erika came over a few months or weeks ago to JRC, and I think we talked for 1.5 hours about the underlying reasons, narratives, values, emotions, and all of the things combined that we'll talk today already about, but also in the exercise later on. And I thought, well, we align so well with our ideas. Let me perhaps share how we got to this to reinforce the message. Basically, that was the original idea. Also, I heard there was already some criticism towards the European Commission. I am part of that research part, so I cannot speak for what Sante should do or should have done, or Klima or environment. So I'm just taking this on the side. So the origin of the work that I'm presenting here, I want to talk about, is really the Enlightenment 2.0, very pretentious name. I know I haven't chosen it, I came later. Research idea, and that is, we in the JRC, we have about 3,000 researchers researching everything from agricultural practices to nuclear decommissioning, to what is the best macroeconomic financial system, whatever. And we exist for a long time, and we have realized and learned over time also that pure scientific information itself doesn't necessarily travel, and convincing policymakers by just producing more science and more excellent science and better published science doesn't do the trick either. There's something more that we need to understand that goes to then persuading someone or informing someone to such a degree that they take up this information. And that is the origin of this research, where we try to understand what are all these other factors aside from the wonderful paper that's published in a prestigious journal. And the first report was this Understanding Our Political Nature in 2019. It gave a kind of overview of this, all these kind of factors of values, emotions, trust, collective intelligence, and so on, that lead someone to think in a certain way about facts and receive the facts, and from whom especially, who do they trust. Another report then later on specifically focusing on what changed currently due to these technological upheavals. Now we are interacting most of the time via screen with each other. What does that do to the way we interact? And it does change how we learn and understand things. And then the report that I led on values and identities that I will talk a little bit more about. And another one that we are currently working on, and I think also falls into the angle that we talked about here, is trustworthy public communications, where we think about what's, with all the science that we know, on the one hand on the behavioral science, but also from the perspective of ethics, of what we should do, how should governments communicate? What are the different levels of goals that one could have? Because very often the Commission, for example, gets advice on how it should communicate from marketing companies who basically come with the same toolbox they offer to companies. So you just need to persuade them to buy into what you have. It's like, well, we are different. We are representative for a democratic institution that should do what citizens want us to do rather than we want citizens to buy what we do. So it's a little bit different, and that's what we're working on at the moment. As part of this, I'll say a survey, and that is the content of this presentation. But before, just this infographic from this values and identities report, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the whole thing because that would take ages. But just when we talk about values, which I guess we talk about later on as well in the exercise, what we found based on the social science or social psychology specifically is there's actually a map to values. Values are not somewhere in the realm and everyone has some kind of values and they're free floating. No, there seems to be some systematic relationship between different kind of values. And we usually, all of us prioritize some values more than others, and we're diverse over this. And that's the most consistent finding. In every single country within the EU or everywhere in the world, we have this diversity over values. And that means whenever we discuss any kind of policy, we will have to think about that people want different things out of this. Even if they have the same scientific information, even if EFSA says this is perfectly safe, whatever, according to our standards, what does this mean for people? What is their definition of safe is probably different than yours. That's something we should take into account. And I'm just going to explain the very, very center of this graph. And you can look it up later online if you want to know more. And that is the two core, let's say, opposing dimensions that we usually talk about is, on the one hand, and let me see if I have a laser here. Yes, I have a laser. Great. This is self-transcendence. It's not very well readable, so I apologize for this. It's either people caring about others more, that means equality, tolerance, but also nature. They fall very closely together here. So very often when I talk to scientists, but also to people in the Commission, they fall kind of here a little bit more, which seems to conflict to some degree with values of being rich or successful, recognition in society. That's one dimension of potential values conflict. Another one that's orthogonal to this, it means doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the other dimension. So you cannot, because you know this, you cannot predict where they stand on the other dimension, is either this openness, you want to do your own thing, be creative, experience new stuff, go to other countries and speak there, or you care about your in-group, conservation, what is a group doing, traditions, etc. And when we talk about agriculture, farmers are very often in this corner, which means they trust their local community, they trust their neighbors because they helped them in the past and they have to help them, so they have to have this kind of community thinking. And that means that if a scientist who usually is here, so I did this actually with my advisors here, and they were all exactly here on this point, funnily enough, then there's already kind of a different worldview that comes together, and it may clash. And that's something to keep in mind. So why then do I talk about moralization when we talk about values? Well, the values lead us to think about what is right or wrong in society. And therefore, you see here some recent pictures from the protests across Europe. In Germany, I guess, who recognizes the Ampel, the streetlights government. What do they think is right or wrong? So we did a survey on this, but first, where do we build it, or why do we build this on? There's some theory in social psychology based on this idea of, well, we do not define necessarily for people what their morals are or come from philosophy. We just ask them, is this for you something about right or wrong? And this comes down to this differentiation of attitudes based on either some conventions. Do we drive on the left or right side of the street? There's a right or wrong there, but it's not a moral one. It's just we do it this way, and that's okay. Then there's some preference differences. So do we like to dress in a certain way? We understand that other people do it differently. We may not even like it, but we don't think normally that is a moral issue about the right, good or bad in society. But then there are some issues that fall into the moral imperatives. And people vary about which things they put into this category. And that's why we ask about this. And when they put something in this category, then the science shows that basically people see this as, this is factual. Everyone should see it this way. There's no discussion about it. It's absolute. This holds everywhere, no matter what. It's very emotional. It doesn't matter who says anything about this. So authority, like EFSA or even the research there is about the Supreme Courts, doesn't matter. If they have their opinion on this, that's the right thing. And they're very resistant to change and intolerant towards the other side. So what we did is, because we don't know much about this in Europe, because the research is only US-based, we did a survey in 7 different countries on 19 different policies to get a landscape of moralization of policies in Europe, so we can map this. And this is the result here. So how do you read this? The blue bars, light and dark together, are those people who say this issue is something of right or wrong, good or bad in society for them. So you see this here sorted by the issues. And then dark blue means they agree with the policy, and light blue, they disagree with the policy. So basically what you see, the highest moralized policy was one that we asked for whether we should ban products that come from forced labor. And most of the people in society say, yes, that is a moral issue, and most agree. Only very tiny fraction says, well, no, we shouldn't. Meaning there's no polarization around this, even though many people see this as moral. So that's important. And then, because we talk here about agriculture, I thought, okay, I'll pick out those ones that are relevant for this discussion today, and these are the red bars here. One was we should reduce fishing to a sustainable level. So you see there also moralization levels around 50%, high, but also again, low level of disagreements among those who moralize it. So most of the people say, yes, if it's something about society, good or bad, then they also agree with we should limit this. Same for biodiversity. We should take more care about biodiversity in our agricultural practices. A little bit more disagreement among the moralizers. And then meat tax is the one thing that is the least, or one of the least moralized issues in Europe from the 19 policies that we looked at. And you see the last one is we should do more space exploration. So I really try to get the whole spectrum there. But among those who moralize it, we have a large share of disagreement and a share of agreeing. Means those who care about the subject, they battle with each other. That's what we usually see. I didn't put it on slides, but there was a big recent study by the OECD on certain sustainable policies, and meat tax was the one thing that was riling everyone up. So that's something we should take away. It's not the most important thing in society for people in general, but those who find it important, there's on both sides a lot of people who disagree with this. And this is what I think you should take away from this. When we think about agriculture, these are not the most salient topics in society on moral grounds at the moment. And only really meat tax, at least among these 19 that I looked at, is something where we need to be careful about. On a general societal level. Doesn't mean that this is for farmer specific, which can be very different. So implications, many policies are moralized in general, so many people think something is very important to them, and therefore they don't care so much about the facts behind it. They care about whether they get what they believe is the right thing in the first place. So that's very difficult for scientists to hear, because that means that the information doesn't really make a difference there. We need to understand this a little bit more. For example, what we do at the moment is we develop with 70 researchers from 9 different countries a annotation algorithm, or we annotate news and political manifestos for values. to develop an algorithm that we can then apply to all kinds of news and also social media to detect the values underneath these. And when I went with these results to one of our chief negotiators in the European Commission on agricultural policies, he said, well, he's not very surprised, because for him, and he's doing this for many years, he's doing the negotiations, but he's also then afterwards always on these stands talking to farmers in every single European country and also abroad, saying, well, their concerns on the surface are what's currently in the news. Sure, you discuss this. But what's really underneath this is decades of decline of rural areas. That is what they care about. Their community that they care about, coming back to the values dimension, is declining for years after year after year. And then when the Commission comes or the EU comes with a new regulation on you need to do this additionally, then of course they are angry. They're not angry with the topic itself, with the thing underneath, but they're angry because they feel abandoned for a long time. And that's something we should understand, recognize that, as you say, it's not always about the food safety or the policy itself. It's about, they have some underlying issue that if we do not address this, well, we likely going to have these protests that we see at the moment in Europe every year. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Mario. This was indeed enlightening, I think, at least for me. I hope others share the same impression. And have maybe one or two quick questions and a quick answer, because then I think we should move on in the program. I'm sorry if it's a bit tight, but I think that's the nature of a 4-hour workshop. Barbara.
I'd just like to pick up, because you also talked about the chatbot as a possible recommendation for us to take on. I really love this idea of personalized journeys, personalized communications. With the AI at the European Commission principles and criteria, where are we in terms of institutions, because the agencies then follow, about the use of AI and particularly chatbots for provision of information to citizens. Have you got any research that shows that there isn't an issue with trust and we can really run away and develop them?
Okay, there are multiple questions in this one question. The one thing is, of course, the question where we are on regulation on AI, the AI Act, and we see, at least in the news at the moment, the agreement between the countries seems to be shaky. So I cannot comment on this, as you may well know. Internally, we definitely in the JRC have the GPT at JRC. We have our own interface where we use the API and then develop our own algorithms based on this. So I'm personally optimistic to be able to use this. What I can say, though, for example, even this simple research that I mentioned by Hugo Mercier, they didn't even use an AI for this. They used a simple clickable bot, because they pre-programmed the answers. They are, social science researchers, and didn't train the whole algorithm there. And of course, you could ask the question, what about trust? But they show that the attitude shift was much more than any other normal message intervention. Meaning, even if the trust is lower, it still works there. So I don't think you need AI necessarily for this. It's just a different way to present your FAQ, not by having to scroll down for hours to find your question, but to be able to interact with something, and that itself may work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we limit it to one more question? Is that okay? Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any surveys to get to profiling people? Like in the profile that you have sent. So is there any quick and fast and dirty survey that you can have, for instance, that we could have all of us done before coming here? So we have a profiling of the people that are here, so we can see if there are compatibilities or not, or there is going to be controversy.
Yes. I have one that I have a prototype for 1.5 years now that I can send you immediately, that we usually done in all our internal trainings in the Commission, where I let people do this, and I even have the data behind it for a representative EU citizen, so you can see where you are relative to the EU citizen. It's very nice. I'm fighting with our own IT to get this published in a secure way without our own IT blowing up for a long time. I hope to be able to have this up this year in an official version that we can then use. But I can send you the prototype, no problem.
That's profiling on values?
On values specifically, yes.
Yeah, that sounds exciting and promising, I think. Thank you very much, Mario. This was great. And now we quickly move over to our chief narrative scientist from RIE Europa, which is Andrej Novak. He's not only the chief narrative scientist at RIE Europa, but also a professor of social psychology at the University of Warsaw and at Florida Atlantic University. And yeah, he will now present the work he has done together with Marcin Napiórkowski. I tried to learn the name before. And yeah, Andrej, more than ever, I ask you to be quick so that we have enough time for our social simulation and a coffee break. Yeah, please go ahead and please allow me to limit your time while you're speaking, when I'm sitting here.
Absolutely. Okay, so
I have to put up.
let me try to.
Sorry, I forgot that. It's the wrong slide.
By the way, this work has. I'm here the presenter, but really this is the result of the work of the whole group. And I think 3 people led this work, which is Erika Stilson-Holten and Marcin Napiórkowski and myself. So I'm here the presenter, but this is a joint project. Joint product. So actually, I'll be talking about using the reframe methodology to depolarize the debate on NGT's agriculture. You can see there are 3 authors. The main idea behind our approach to depolarization is that public debate on many issues in Europe has become increasingly polarized. And the options and opinions are becoming more extreme. The debate is getting more emotional, which really makes it challenging to find a shared agreed-upon solution to many problems that European societies need so much. And really, but let me make very clear one thing: is that polarization is very different from diversity, okay? Because diversity is the basis of democratic societies. We're talking about values, and people have different values, and this is, I would say, this is natural. People may have different opinions. However, the democratic way is for people to, or democracy offers many mechanisms by which people can debate, talk, and find solutions that in many ways could be best for many of them. So here advocating, I want to make it very clear that advocating for depolarization, in no way I advocate for unification. I advocate for creating conditions that make dialogue possible, and this dialogue allows finding solutions that takes into account aspects that are important to all the stakeholders. And the risk of polarized debate is the risk of stalemate. So this is kind of lose-lose situation. Everyone loses because nothing can move apart. The democratic decision process is stalled. No one wins. Society cannot solve this problem and adapt to a changing situation. And I think that right now, because of enormous changes is taking place in all areas, to large degree brought by the advances in technology, I mean, societies need to be able to react faster and adapt to changing challenges. So our narrative approach to depolarization is really trying to the essence of this is try to go beyond polarizing narrative. And this is so really we are trapped by our own narratives. And stories are the primary tool by which we experience the world. They're in a way blueprints for reality that we have in our mind. They shape our perceptions. Narratives unite us with our in-groups and divide us with whoever we perceive as an out-group. So narratives tell us who our friends are and who are our enemies. And instead of focusing on solving problems, each side is trying to defend its own narratives. So instead of trying to find solutions, we are trying to win the debate. And those involved in a polarized dispute feel the conflict is irreconcilable and the divide is fundamental. However, in many instances of our work, we have found, and also we can see in the literature, that people with even very much polarized narratives share many values. Okay? So the idea is to go beyond narratives and really concentrate on the common values. Usually, it is just the narratives that drive and sustain the conflict. People kind of act whatever is prescribed in the narratives, and by kind of diving below the narratives, this is the way when we can find we can achieve depolarization. So the idea is to focus on both content and the form of communication, facilitate dialogue instead of pushing solutions. So basically, what we're saying, well, I mean, we need dialogue, and narrative analysis allows us or moves us in this direction. So the reframe methodology is just, composed of 7 steps, each one kind of represented by a letter. Responsive listening, so learn to hear beyond words, grasping what is truly being said. Eliminate polarizing language. Focus on shared objectives and values. Recognize shared humanity. And so basically means approach advertise with empathy, seeing beyond labels to the person beneath. Adopt clear procedural guidelines. And very important is to be able to merge and solve. This means that the questions who is wrong, who is right are almost never answered in a constructive way. So the whole way is to how we can break down into issues to which we can find practical solutions. Okay? So try to break down bigger issues into smaller problems, and then finally evolve collective stories. So. Very briefly, I mean, responsive listening is learning to hear beyond words, grasping what is truly being said. So really, the dialogue starts with empathic listening, and narratives are more about listening than about pushing your points. So then we need to go beyond the dividing narratives and try to understand the values, concerns, and true goals underlying narratives, and we had this in this discussion before, that really discussion about food technology is not at all discussion about food technology, about social issues, worries, concerns, a host of other problems. And before we understand what it's really about, it is very, very difficult to address or to find a solution in a debate. And really, understanding other narratives doesn't mean abandoning your values and goals. Again, we are very much avoiding trying to push everyone, kind of adopting one-for-all solutions. On the contrary, it may be an effective way of fulfilling them. Eliminate polarizing language. So simply, just the language that we use to advocate influences what happens in the debate. Here you can see analysis of this is, let me see, where's the laser? Okay, this is the laser. So this is simply, the the white dimension is how much each term is polarizing, more or less is negative emotion. And here, in what type of discussion, on the precaution-oriented, innovation-oriented is used, you can see further from the center means more polarized. And you can see that there is a cluster of words that are really non-polarizing. The more kind of we move to the extreme, the more polarizing words are being used. And this word just elicit emotional reaction instead of trying to talk about the issues. The next one is, the next F is focus on shared objectives. I've discussed this before, so I think I can skip it. Okay, and so get common aspirations, values, and foundations for joint actions. Then recognize shared humanity, which really means that this is approach advertised with empathy, beyond being, having position on the issue or performing some roles. They're also humans, and everyone kind of, can be treated with dignity, right? So here I would say kind of try to look beyond the role the person plays and look into the human aspect. Then adopt clear procedural guidelines. So procedural rules are crucial for maintaining focus on the issues, not the individuals. And very often, the narrative ping pong just fuels the polarization. So it is not the content by the process of kind of interrupting someone, and then this person tries to finish the point, and then interruption kind of, the discussion gets more emotional, and basically, and then it is, suddenly things are very polarized. So agreeing clear guidelines, there, for example, like equal speaking time for all participants, strict rules against interrupting speakers, a clear agreed upon process for reaching conclusions, and so on, make debates much more fruitful and less polarized. Then I told you about breaking larger issues into small manageable problems. Okay, so I think we can go on. And finally, evolve collective stories. So build more narratives that go beyond dichotomies, so that are kind of that are created by narratives. For example, Urs was talking about Urs' presentation, about agriculture, was also addressing this some false dichotomies or innovation safety. I mean, at the same time, it's possible to innovate and be safe, right? So basically, and every collaboration fosters new narratives. So basically here we are saying, well, let's try to find narratives that would allow us to defend our points and debate them in a way that wouldn't be polarized. Conflict is a process, and it can be productive. And here again, the same thing with diversity, okay? We should not be avoiding conflicts. For example, every innovation, whatever area, brings a conflict between the old and the new, right? And we need innovations to adapt, right? Innovations, and Morton Deutsch, one of the classical psychologists who kind of founded the whole lines of research on conflict, he distinguished between constructive conflicts and destructive conflicts. And constructive conflicts are simply the expression of diversity of values, diversity of ideas, and then we find ways, usually when we solve this conflict, the parties each like each other even more and are more willing to work together. Destructive conflicts can destroy almost any process. So here the idea is that a conflict is a process, that it can be productive. And therefore, we should concentrate on conflict management rather than conflict prevention. And conflict and social conflict has many dimensions, and here we can talk about triangle satisfaction. So usually we concentrate on the result, which is substantial satisfaction. So we can say the satisfaction about outcomes. Who gets what? It's simple, right? Okay. However, another dimension is process. which means procedural satisfaction. Maybe I'll give you the idea because this is not clear. Imagine that two people, John and Peter, did the same work, and one of them got for this 10 euros, and another one got 50 euros. Is it a just solution? Looks like it isn't. But if we decided that, well, maybe if we learned that maybe they decided that, well, for 50 euros you can, for example, buy a ticket for an interesting match. So at least one of them could go to an interesting event, and they decided to throw a coin, right? So this is the outcome of the throw of a coin. Suddenly, what seems unacceptable at the level of the outcome is acceptable at the level of a process. And social psychology has worked on some rules. One of them is transparency. Another one is ability for everyone to have a voice that work toward perception of a process as just. And finally, there is simply psychological satisfaction, which has to do with relations and emotions. For example, being respected in a dispute, right? I mean, maybe people may be satisfied even if they lose a debate, but they feel respected. Then winning a debate that is filled up with negative emotions in which they feel disrespected. And if you think about what type of consequences it has for future interactions, right? Maybe this is most important. So I would say that really we need to think about all these dimensions when approaching conflict situation. And there's something that I believe this is one of the most important rules of social psychology. It is Morton Deutsch, the founder of the research of the whole area of research on social orientation. Is the so-called crude law of social relations, which states that cooperation fosters more cooperation, and competition and conflict breeds more competition. So whatever happens that seems to be cooperative brings other elements of cooperativity in the situation. Whatever is being seen as a fight, and negativity and competition brings other elements of competition. And so in a way, this is a very interesting situation. We are talking here about circles, but a circle where the cause becomes the effect, and effect becomes the cause, right? So conflict, and so cooperation fosters cooperation. So in whatever seemingly even insignificant areas, we can start cooperating, okay? This is one of the best bridges to build more cooperation. So this reframe methodology is really, says that we need to use our understanding of narratives and social dynamics to manage conflict towards more productive forms. In order to do that, we need to move from narratives as the part of a problem to narratives as a part of the solution. If you are interested in the narrative manual, the polarization manual, you all have it here, but if you wanted to recommend it to your friends, here is the code. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andre. Are there any direct questions to the presentation? If not, the idea is also to implement this in the simulation and then discuss afterwards at the end what the implications are and what we could do better. But I see there's one urgent comment over there.
Just one question about one of the first questions that was asked. And if somebody is coming with really bad intentions and is just telling lies in the debate, how do you handle that?
I would say that a lot of research, not only in psychology but in social sciences, have shown that debunking the lies, although morally right, is not necessarily the most effective strategy. okay? Because what happens is that people who are convinced about something, when their point of view is being challenged, they will become even more convinced. Debunking works with people who are kind of neutral, or at least slightly doubting. But someone is convinced strongly. I mean, you know, it has the effect we could in the break. Martin can tell about the experience with debunking. You know, so I think that the thing is that we need. I mean, I would say that usually this person makes this for some reason, because very often the narratives and the opinions are not about the topic. They're just about something else. For example, about, you know, that they maybe, you know, denying, let's say, the role of you know, agriculture or animal, you know, production on on the climate. It's not at all about science, but maybe this is about, you know, about the role of, you know, of maybe this is a worry about let's say agricultural areas and trade and you know, the farmers who raise livestock. So then the way to in a way go beyond this information is to try to address this directly. So how, for example, we can, while maintaining, it's not about technology maybe, how can we somehow in our regulation make sure that some concerns, which may be absolutely valid and true, but have nothing to do with technology, are being addressed. And I think for this is the debate. So really kind of trying to understand what really people mean, what really, because I would say that very often beyond what we feel are very bad intentions, are true concerns, worries of people who have like different values, you know, and they're trying to make statements, to kind of project their fears, their expectations on technology. But really, these worries could be easily decoupled from technologies and addressing it such as they are.
Okay, one more.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for your thought-provoking presentation. Also, the work that you did as a team, really inspiring. I have many questions, but I limit myself to one. I've seen in your graph that you put prices at the bottom. But I know today with true pricing, it's quite a topic and people have different opinions about it. And it's becoming probably a more and more important topic also in the future if you like to include environmental, social values and so on. So my question is, who is involved in the narrative, in the process, at what moment, for who is the narrative also meant? Is the who is involved also the who group who is finally the one who is addressed by the narrative? You didn't say so much about the who is involved. Could you say a word about it? Maybe it's a topic on itself, but...
Martin, I think, wants to answer this.
Yeah, I'll be happy to join the debate. First, if I may very quickly refer to the previous question also, because I think that's the point where our research meets the previous presentations. Because very often when we face direct lies, it's not only about motivation, it's also about incentives. And we need to think about leveling the playing field here. So it's all about procedural rules here. Now, lying in social media really pays off. And without regulating the platforms, which is a part of regulating the debate, we will not solve this problem because many agents here do not lie because they are afraid or they don't understand, but because provocation is a very attractive form of making money in social media, and we are not able to solve this by reaching to the values. We need to address the incentives also. And for the narrative communities and price as being polarizing or non-polarizing term, this is a very interesting case because the basis of our research is semiotics. So we work with texts, not with people. We are very easily able to group the texts, but later to know who are actually the people behind the text, we need these next steps. That's why I was mesmerized by the data shown by European Food Safety Agency. I wasn't aware that you're researching the people behind the narratives. I will be happy to learn more about that, because obviously we can make a next step with focus groups, with some more detailed profiling to know who is actually saying that. But using the narrative approach also gives us the second thing. So we can notice the things that people disagree on, for example, prices. Nobody is ever happy about the price. The producer wants it to be higher, the consumer wants it to be lower. And that's how the thing works. That's the very concept of price. But at the same time, using different measures, for example, looking what term appeared in many different narratives, so it's shared. What term appeared in these narratives in similar context, and what term appeared in text that didn't contain other terms that may be viewed as polarizing. So, for example, name-calling or blaming. We have identified price as one of the things, or regulation or policies that people disagree on, but do not get polarized and the debate does not escalate. So this is the perfect example of what Andrzej began with. We can have diverse opinion and it's great, but we can simply say that this price is too high for me, this price should be lower, higher, without engaging into debate which views the partner as the enemy. So this is why I was really happy to put a price there in the middle, because it shows that we can disagree, but still continue the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that we have to end the discussion for now here. There is coffee served. They're already waiting for us, and I was already told we should hurry up with grabbing our coffees and the biscuits. I hope you're equally looking forward to me as I am. But before I leave you to your coffee, I would like to make a little bit of an announcement for what comes after the break, because this needs a little bit of coordination, and you're 2 minutes more of attention right now. So you should all have like stickers on your folders in a certain color, and you should have all received a badge, a sticker with a role that you're going to play in the simulation after the break. The folders are the purple folders. There's the color. So we have 3 breakout groups, a purple one, a green one, and a red one. The purple one has to manage the challenge of changing the room. It's in room C. It's right when you pass the coffee area, you go right past the secretariat, I think it's called, and then left. But Victor, this young gentleman over here, will guide you, so he's your guide. Your facilitator will be Andrzej, and he will explain more what the direct context is about in the social simulation. And the other 2 groups, the green and the red ones, I would say the red group meets on this side, and the green one over there. It should be 8 participants per group. I think some late cancellations reduced the number to like 6 or 7. Yeah, so make yourself familiar with your role. You should have all an explanation in your folder also about the different roles, about the context of the simulation. So if you have time now in the break, try to read up a little bit about the context and try to already transform yourself into either an eco-warrior, or how did we call them? Eco-guardian, a global justice person, or a quantum technologist. Yes. The colors are on the folder. There is it's purple folders with the purple color. I'm sorry, Jaron. So look closely, there is a sticker on your folder. If anyone needs help, please come to the reception desk and we try to explain to you again how this is supposed to work. But and we meet in 15 minutes again. So at 4:20, okay?